Welcome to Flourish in 5. My name is Heather Lawton, and every Friday I share a story, a lesson, or a quick idea with the goal of helping you gain a new perspective. If you could please subscribe and share this episode or the podcast with your friends, I would really appreciate it. And before we get into today's material, I just want to say thank you to everyone that reached out to me regarding my mom's accident. She had surgery last week. She is recovering at home. The surgery was successful and she has a long road ahead of her, but I'm pretty confident that we can figure it out as long as I am able to protect her from my dad. And if you're not sure what I'm talking about, just take a listen to last week's episode. Let's switch gears. I want to tell you a story about two friends that I was recently talking to. Okay, two friends, two separate conversations around some challenges that they are facing with their children. And these are not small challenges. It's not like, oh, my kid has a bad attitude and isn't cleaning their room or things like that. It's some pretty heavy, serious stuff. And in both cases, they each said some version of, I haven't told anyone, or I wasn't going to tell anyone, or I even hesitated to tell you because I don't want you to think differently of me or the children. There was a lot of shame wrapped up in these conversations, but they trusted me and they needed to talk to me about it. But what was interesting, there are a lot of things that were interesting, but one thing in particular was that these two people actually know each other and they are facing a very, very similar issue. It's just that the other one doesn't know. And I'm going to try to figure out a way to connect them and just try to get them to talk so that they can support one another. But again, if people don't want to talk about what's going on in their lives, then they're never going to be able to connect or get the support that they need. I do a lot of reading and researching around the topic of shame because I am a huge Brené Brown fan. I recently read her book, The Gifts of Imperfection, and I'm also reading Atlas of the Heart. But in The Gifts, she said, shame keeps worthiness away by convincing us that owning our stories will lead to people thinking less of us. So again, in both cases, my friends were like, oh, I don't even know if I really want to tell you this because I'm worried. She also says, shame needs 3 things to grow out of control in our lives: secrecy, silence, and judgment. When something shameful happens, we keep it locked up and it festers and grows. It consumes us. We need to share our experiences. Shame happens between people, and it also heals between people. If we can find someone who has earned the right to hear our story, we need to tell it. Shame loses power when it is spoken. In this way, we need to cultivate our story to let go of shame, and we need to develop shame resilience in order to cultivate our story. Again, that's from The Gifts of Imperfection by Brené Brown. But what I was most intrigued by was that shame needs 3 things to keep it alive. And that is secrecy, silence, and judgment. And it's not just the judgment of others, it's the judgment we're placing on ourselves about what this particular story means. Now, in the case of my friends, the things that they're talking about are very serious. And maybe when your child does something that is less than ideal, you feel embarrassed. Like, why is my kid doing that? Or something is happening that is mostly out of your control. There's this shame and embarrassment. So one of my friends actually said, yeah, I just haven't talked about it. I just don't want to advertise it or talk to people about it. And the thing is, I'm not suggesting that you go broadcast your story across social media in order to release your shame. I agree with Brené here. She wants you to think of someone who has earned the right, someone that you trust, someone who you've known or maybe has been there for you, or you feel you can trust and confidence, someone who has earned the right to hear your story. So what I'd like you to do is think of something that you've been keeping to yourself whether it's big and serious or just small and embarrassing. You've been keeping it to yourself because you feel shame around it. Could you drop the pride and open up to someone without worrying about what they might think of you, that they might think less of you? Because I can almost guarantee that if you open up and you tell them a story, they'll have a story. They'll want to share something, either maybe even that's directly related or totally different, but it just opens up the space for people to communicate. When you do this, you normalize these things that we would typically keep hidden. And I've got to tell you, I've experimented with this, and it sets you free. You all of a sudden, that thing that was just like really holding you back and you were keeping in the dark, you tell someone about it. It turns out they don't judge you. They still love you and care about you. They don't think less of you. And you're like, oh, okay, that secret or that issue does not hold any power over me anymore. So my mission this week is to connect these two friends and just say, hey, you guys need to go out to dinner and talk because I think you can help one another. And your homework is to think of something you've been keeping to yourself. Again, a secret does not have to be big. Could you share it with someone? When you do that and they accept you, you will realize you didn't die. It will open things up. You'll talk about more things and you will experience freedom. I hope that you found this useful. I'll see you in the next episode.